Hello, I'm Angela Princewell, and on this segment of Ask AP, I'm going to be answering the question, my kid is starting university and my partner wants to see my RESP statements. Why do I have to share this? Short answer, because it's Ontario family law. So in family law, disclosure is everything. But let me explain why it might be relevant in your case. So as a general rule, parents have an obligation to support their children and to financially support their children to the best of their abilities and in accordance to what's in the best interest of the child. If the child is going to post-secondary, depending on the parties' incomes and lifestyles during the marriage and things like that, the parents potentially have an obligation to support the child through their with their post-secondary expenses. And when looking at that, it's a parent it could either be both parents, if they have the means, choose to just share the expenses of the child for their post-secondary education. They could choose to just share this equally proportionate to their incomes, whatever works out for them. Or in some cases, parents would say, well, we want some contribution for the child from the child. And so when you're looking at, again, contribution from the child, then of course you look at what's available, what are the means of the child, and what are the means of the parents in providing for this child. Because the means of the parents is an important consideration, right? So if we're looking at the RESP as being owned by the parent and the child, of course, is the beneficiary, well, as part of considering the means of the parents in determining how much that parent should contribute, well, the RESP is an important piece of that puzzle. For example, if school is going to cost, say, $10,000 for the year, and you're trying to figure out how much should, dad in this case contribute towards, this post-secondary expenses. Well, how much does that have in RSPs for the children might be an important consideration if we're concerned about affordability, right? So if we're looking at the child contributing a portion of it, but it turns out that there's been money in an RSP set aside for the child that can cover the child's entire education, then there's an argument to be made that, well, maybe this child doesn't really need to be contributing to their post-secondary education. They can work and do all that, but that's money that they could use for their lifestyle and other things. And the RESP should be earmarked to pay for the child's education in full. So there's a lot of discussions and a lot of questions that can be answered when you look into the RESPs. And it could go the other way as well. When you look into the RESPs and it's obvious that there is not enough money in there to fund the child's education, then, we really need to get realistic here. How much can the parents afford? How much can the child afford to bring in? At the end of the day, it's all about making sure that parents meet their obligations to support their children, but also making sure that we look at the means and needs of the parents and the children, and ensuring that the children's best interests are met, and in this particular context, ensuring that they get an education with as little as disadvantage as possible, given that the parents have already, the parents separated. So, if the plan always was, well, during the marriage, we're going to save for the RESP so that the children don't have to go into debt and to fund their education, then that's something that becomes relevant. What happened with that money, especially if it wasn't equalized? Well, it should be used towards the children's education as planned. Or as I said again, it may work the other way, where it's like, well, it's been invested in investments that have not yielded a great return, and it's turned out that now there's not that much money in the fund for the children. So disclosure is everything. It helps guide the conversation. It might be relevant. It will definitely be relevant in determining how much your obligation would be to support the child's post-secondary expenses, which, by the way, not only includes, the basics like tuition, books, and residence, but, some little things, maybe eating, having to stay in a hotel for a few days between moving dates and things like that, travel expenses. There's a lot, right, that goes into these post-secondary expenses. So I hope that answers the question. First and foremost, disclosure is the cornerstone of all of family law, but it's very helpful in the analysis of determining the means of the parents and the child and looking at how much should be contributed towards a child's post-secondary expenses. I hope that answers the question. And until next time, it's bye for now.